Sam Ansel presents The Silence That Swallowed Me. Today, I'm going to share the story of when I realized I had gone silent, not just in voice, but in spirit. I could no longer recognize the person I had become. That moment marked the beginning of a long journey toward Mount Shasta, a path that taught me a lesson I could never have learned anywhere else. It was painful. It was a long wait for a glimpse of hope, just to survive. What I didn't know then was that every step would lead me to a new reality, one that would change me forever. I invite you to listen to this story as if you were there yourself, walking alone through the wild, face to face with the powerful presence of a mountain that holds the very meaning of life. Chapter 1: The Silence That Swallowed Me. My name's Michael. Born in 1980, just outside of Chicago. And I guess you could say I came into this world talking. My mom used to joke that I skipped baby babble and went straight to asking questions. I was that kid who made friends on playgrounds in minutes. The one who talked to adults like I was 30, even when I was 6. I loved stories. I loved people. I loved life. But somewhere along the way, something changed. It wasn't sudden, like a light switch. It was subtle. Quiet. Like fog creeping in at dawn. I started to feel uncomfortable. In my own voice. Not just the sound of it, but the way I spoke. The expressions I made. The rhythm in my sentences. The way people looked at me. I couldn't put my finger on it at the time. But deep down, I began to feel strange. Like I didn't belong. Like I was wrong somehow. At first, I thought maybe it was just the people around me. The same classmates, same neighborhood, same circle of friends. Maybe they'd formed an image of me that I couldn't escape. So I did the only thing I knew to do when you want to change everything. I left. New school. New neighborhood. New city. Eventually, a whole new country. But it followed me. That discomfort. That tension in my chest when I opened my mouth. I began to realize the problem wasn't out there. It was inside me. I was seeing myself through a broken mirror. And the more I looked, the more distorted I became. At some point, I stopped talking in public altogether. I'd be walking down the street, and someone would ask me for the time, and I couldn't respond. Not that I wouldn't. I couldn't. It was like my throat would close. Like fear had tied a rope around my vocal cords. I started avoiding people. Stopped going to social events. No more birthdays. No more dates. No more anything. I told myself I didn't need it. Didn't need them. But the truth was, I felt invisible. And the scariest part? I started to prefer it that way. I gained weight. Got a job at a call center. 8 hours a day, repeating the same lines from a script I hated. But it paid my rent. It covered the basics. And I told myself, that was enough. Years went by like that. Gray, quiet, heavy years. Sometimes I'd see someone on the train, laughing with friends, carefree, and I'd wonder, was I ever like that? And worse, will I ever be like that again? I started to think maybe this was just who I was. Maybe I was always meant to fade into the background. To be the quiet one. The odd one. The one who never really fit. But life has a strange way of waking you up. And when it does, it doesn't whisper. It shakes you. Sometimes gently. Other times, violently. And for me, that wake-up call was coming. I just didn't know it yet. Chapter 2: Mount Shasta. It all started with a moment I can't fully explain. A rock bottom so low I couldn't even see the stars above me anymore. I had hit my limit. And in that silence, something inside me broke. Or maybe it finally opened. I saw a strange ad online. Barely visible, like a whisper on a wall. It was for a holistic therapist. Not just any therapist. One who lived in the mountains far from the noise of the world. Mount Shasta, California. I had never even heard of it before. But the more I read, the more I felt pulled. People said it was a place of awakening. A spiritual vortex, a sacred mountain. Something in me said, that's where you need to go. So I worked. Saved every dollar I could. Skipped birthdays, skipped meals. 1 whole year of sacrifice. Just to buy a bus ticket and a little extra for food and maybe a room. And then I left. The plane took me as far as Reading. But the journey to Mount Shasta was just beginning. I remember stepping off that last shuttle in the cold, dry air. The smell of pine. The towering silhouette of the mountain above. It was breathtaking. And terrifying. I had an address scribbled on a napkin. No GPS signal. No Uber. No one around. The woman at the gas station just smiled and said, Green Gate, end of the old fire road. About 8 miles that way. She pointed toward a winding dirt path through the woods. I laughed. Until I realized she wasn't joking. 8 miles. On foot. In the cold. With a storm coming in. There were no hostels nearby. No backup plan. Just my feet, my backpack, and a strange sense of urgency. I stood there for a long moment, thinking maybe this was a mistake. But something deeper than fear told me to go. So I went. The road turned to gravel, then to dirt, then to roots and pine needles. I walked for hours. And the deeper I got, the quieter the world became. My legs burned. My feet ached. Blisters were already forming. And then came the rain. Cold. Relentless. It soaked through my jacket like paper. I found a huge cedar tree and crawled under its branches for shelter. My stomach growled. I had already eaten through most of the cookies and protein bars. The only thing left was a fast food hamburger I'd been saving. And a few cigarettes. I ate the burger in 2 bites. Then regretted not savoring it. Night was falling. Fast. I couldn't see more than a few feet ahead. Lightning flashed behind the mountain, and the wind howled through the trees. I knew I couldn't keep walking. Not blind. Not wet and freezing. That's when I saw it. Just a shadow between the trees at first. A small opening in the rock. A cave. I didn't think twice. I ducked inside, shaking from cold and fear. There was no light. No one. Just the sound of my breath echoing off stone. I pulled out my lighter. And saw the last 3 cigarettes in my hand. I didn't smoke one. Instead, I used them to start a fire. I broke sticks, scraped dry bark. And laid the cigarettes like kindling at the center. It took forever. But finally, the flame caught. A weak little fire. But enough to warm my hands. I sat by it and stared into the orange glow. As the storm howled just outside the cave. That was my first night on the mountain. Alone. Hungry. Worn out. But not afraid anymore. Something about being there, in the wild heart of Mount Shasta. Stripped of all comforts. Felt sacred. I didn't know it yet. But that cave was going to change everything. It was going to bury me alive. So I could finally wake up. Chapter 3. The Cave and the Awakening. I didn't sleep much that night. The fire burned low. And the sound of the storm outside echoed like drums through the cave walls. Each gust of wind felt like the breath of the mountain itself. Alive, ancient, watching me. Eventually, the fire died. And I just lay there. On the cold, uneven stone. With nothing but my damp jacket and my own thoughts. I tried to sleep. But my mind wouldn't stop. What the hell was I doing here? Chasing some mystical therapist in the woods, halfway across the country. Hiding in a cave like some desperate animal. Then, morning came. Or at least I thought it did. I saw a faint glow from the cave entrance. Stood up too fast. And the rocks beneath me gave way. The entire floor beneath my feet collapsed. Not far, maybe a few feet. But enough to plunge me into total darkness again. I wasn't hurt. But now I was deeper inside. And the exit was blocked. A wave of panic hit me like a flood. I clawed at the stones. Screamed. Nothing. I was trapped. No food. No water. No light. And only one cigarette left. I sat in the darkness and cried. Really cried. The kind that comes from your bones. It wasn't just about being stuck in the cave. It was everything. My whole life. All the shame, the silence, the years wasted. All the moments I hadn't spoken up. All the people I let walk away. All the things I wanted to be, but never dared to try. And then, after the crying stopped, there was nothing. Just silence. Pure. Absolute. Silence. And in that silence, something started to change. I began to feel light. Almost floaty. Like I was lifting out of my own body. I wasn't afraid. I wasn't even cold anymore. I just existed. Memories came back to me. Crystal clear. Things I hadn't thought about in decades. The sound of my mother's lullaby. My dad's voice saying, "This boy's gonna be the pride of our family." And then, a flicker of doubt. A faint memory. Of a moment I misunderstood. Something small, a look maybe, or a phrase. And I took it to mean, "They don't really want me." That tiny thought had grown into a belief. And that belief had shaped my entire life. I saw it clearly now. All my insecurity, my silence, my self-hate. It all started there. One false story I told myself as a child. And never questioned again. And then, in the stillness of that cave, I heard it. A voice. Maybe it was my subconscious. Maybe it was something greater. But it said, "I forgive me." Just like that. I forgive me. Because I now forgive them. It felt like lightning inside my chest. Warm. Radiant. True. I saw my parents differently. Not as giants who failed me, but as kids who tried their best. I saw myself differently. Not as a mistake, but as someone who'd been carrying too much pain for too long. I wasn't broken. I was just tired. I lay there for what felt like hours. Or maybe days. Time had stopped. And then, drip, drip, drip. The sound of water. I crawled toward it, hands on stone. The cave walls were wet. Cold, but alive. I licked the rock and tasted the cleanest, purest water I'd ever known. And then I felt it again. That floating sensation. It was as if my senses had multiplied. My lungs felt clearer. Probably from the days without smoking. My hunger quieted. My body stilled. And my mind was finally at peace. It was then that I realized something strange. The water was coming in. And fast. I had two options. Wait and drown. Or dig. So I dug. Stone by stone. My fingers bled. My arms shook. But I wasn't afraid. Not anymore. Because I knew this was the test. Mount Shasta wasn't trying to bury me. It was trying to awaken me. And I wasn't leaving until I passed. Chapter 4. The light and the message. The rocks were heavier now. Colder. And my body barely holding on. My hands were raw. My fingers numb. But I kept going. There was no room for doubt anymore. Only instinct. Dig. Or die. The water reached my ankles. Then my calves. The cave was flooding faster than I expected. Each breath felt tighter in my chest. Not from fear, but from urgency. I pushed against a large stone that hadn't moved in hours. I slammed it with my shoulder. Once. Twice. And then, crack. A shift. I heard it. A hollow sound. A space behind. I scrambled, clawed, shoved it aside. And suddenly, a beam of sunlight cut through the darkness like a sword from heaven. I screamed. Not from fear. Not from pain. But from joy. That golden beam hit my face. And I wept. Sunlight had never meant much to me before. But now, it was everything. I pulled more stones away, until I could squeeze through the gap. And when I did, the mountain breathed. A low rumble behind me. And then, with a crash, the cave collapsed completely. A flood of water burst through the rocks and pushed me forward, throwing me down the slope like I was nothing more than a leaf in the wind. But I didn't resist. I let go. And when I finally landed, face down, soaked, bruised, exhausted, I kissed the earth beneath me. I was alive. I looked up and saw Mount Shasta in all its glory. A giant of stone and spirit, shining under the morning sun like a guardian of secrets. I stood, my legs shaking, my lungs wide open. And then I saw it. A small trail, barely visible. And at the end of it, a house. Not a big one. Old, wooden, quiet. It looked abandoned. But something about it called to me. I limped toward it, my body screaming for rest, but something stronger pulling me forward. When I reached the porch, there was no one there. No lights, no cars, no footprints. Just an ancient wooden sign, chiseled into the side of the cabin. The letters were faded, but still legible. They read, "If you've made it here, your journey was not in vain. You are not lost. You are not alone. You are part of something greater. A family of those who walked through the fire and came out shining. Welcome home." I touched the wood. It was warm, as if the message itself was alive. I sat on the porch and cried again. But this time, it was different. It wasn't grief. It wasn't desperation. It was release. I had survived. Not just the cave. Not just the night. But years, decades, of self-doubt, fear, and silence. And now, for the first time since I could remember, I felt worthy. Not because someone told me I was. Not because I had a title, or a partner, or applause. But because I had walked into the mountain, faced the dark, and found my own damn light. Mount Shasta hadn't healed me. It had revealed me. And as I sat there, with the wind in my hair, and the mountain watching over me, I whispered to the world, "Thank you." Not because the journey was easy, but because it was mine, and I had made it. Chapter 5. A new voice, a new life. I sat on that porch until the sun was high in the sky. It was warm now, not just in the air, but in my chest. For the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to prove anything. I wasn't trying to fix myself, or run from myself, or hide who I was. I just existed, and that was enough. Eventually, I stood and walked around the cabin. No one inside, no one outside, just silence. But it wasn't empty. It was full of stories, of echoes, of lives that had passed through and left their light behind. On a small wooden table near the back of the house, I found a book. Old, leather-bound, no title. Inside were handwritten pages, dozens of them, each from a different person. Pilgrims like me, people who had made this same journey, each one leaving a message for the next. One of them wrote, "I came here thinking I was broken. But the truth is, I was just buried. Under fear, shame, and noise. The mountain didn't heal me. It introduced me to myself." I closed the book and hugged it to my chest. I finally understood. It was never about the guru. There was no mystical figure waiting to fix me. Because the healing didn't come from outside. It came from within. I remembered something I had long forgotten. The sound of my own voice as a child. How I used to sing in the shower. Shout into the wind. Laugh from the belly. And I realized, I missed me. So I made a promise right there. Beneath the sky of Mount Shasta, I would never abandon myself again. I would speak, sing, laugh, cry, live. I would no longer be the ghost at the party. The silent passenger. The man who waits for life to happen. I would create it. I would build a home. Not just for myself, but for others like me. People who felt voiceless, unseen, unworthy. I'd be the place they could rest, the porch they could sit on, the welcome sign that says, "You're not alone." And so, I walked back down that mountain, step by step, lighter than when I came up. I didn't need therapy anymore. Not in the way I thought I did. What I needed was truth, silence, surrender. I returned to the world a different man. I stopped smoking. My appetite for processed food vanished. I started talking to people again. Not to impress them, but to connect. I began telling my story, first quietly, then in writing, then in front of others. And to my surprise, they listened. Not only that, they related. Turns out, there are millions of people walking around, feeling like they don't belong, waiting for permission to exist. But we don't need permission. We just need a moment of awakening, a moment of truth, a crack in the wall we've built around our hearts. Mount Shasta was my crack, and through it, the light poured in. So now, when someone asks me who I am, I don't hesitate. I look them in the eye and say, I'm a man who lost his voice, and then found it on the side of a mountain. I don't run from silence anymore. I don't fear solitude, because I know, within that silence, lives the most powerful sound of all, my own truth, and I carry it with me, wherever I go. Chapter 6. The door was never locked. I don't know how long I sat on that porch. The sun had shifted, painting the trees from a new angle, as if the world itself was exhaling. And I was too. My body still ached. Every muscle reminded me of the stones I'd lifted. But my mind? Clear. Still. Whole. I stepped back inside the cabin, slower this time. Not searching. Just present. In the corner stood an old mirror, dust-covered and forgotten. I wiped it with my sleeve and looked. For the first time in years, I didn't flinch at the face staring back at me. It wasn't someone new. It was me. Just without the old stories layered over everything. And then, I saw it. Tucked into a wall niche I hadn't noticed before. A small, weathered key hanging from a hook. Underneath it, carved faintly into the wood. The door was never locked. It only looked that way from inside. I froze. The cold from the stone floor seemed to lift off me. Because I understood. Everything that kept me trapped. The silence, the guilt, the fear. Was held by a lock I had always had the key to. Maybe the so-called guru of the mountain never existed. Or maybe he was me, all along. Just waiting for me to finally listen. But this wasn't the time for answers. It was time to walk forward. I stepped outside again. By the edge of the porch, an old wooden bench sat facing the mountain. Dozens of names carved into its surface. Some nearly faded. Some still fresh. I picked up a small stone and etched mine beside them. Michael. Just below it, I carved the only sentence that truly made sense anymore. Sometimes the mountain buries you, to bring you back to life. I didn't need anything else. I walked back down the trail with lighter steps. Yes, my body's still hungry. Still thirsty. But nothing hurt anymore. Because now, I knew how to feed myself from the inside. And for the first time, life wasn't something I had to escape. It was something I was finally ready to live. If this story made you feel happy, or even brought a tear to your eye, maybe you should consider listening to the most healing story I've ever lived. A story that helped me understand my life as a whole. To the point where I began writing stories to uplift the human spirit, and turned it into work that benefits others. And it all began with a simple inspiration. The idea that drinking water could be sacred. That this ordinary act could heal the mind and the soul. could bring abundance to everything and everyone around me. We all drink water. The difference is, I started drinking it with intention. I started believing the water could heal me. And from that belief, I created something. A simple way to turn something ordinary into transformation. That's how I built a method. A method that doesn't just change how you feel inside, but lets you see the change happening outside. From day one, you'll grow a plant using the same water we all drink, just charged with intention. And every single day, that plant will reflect the shift taking place within you. And during each of the 21 days of the method, we'll explore a new way to understand water and meditate healing through it. That's what I'm offering. That's what's waiting in the method, for those who are ready. You'll find it in the first link in the description. Or maybe not yet, because the link will only appear once this channel reaches the number of subscribers needed to activate it, so that our egregore becomes even stronger. But if the link is already there, maybe that's your sign. The universe telling you, you're ready. Not next year. Not someday. You're ready now.